to join you all today in this wonderful webinar, and I thank the faculty and organizers of this webinar for inviting me to join and giving me the opportunity to listen to so many bright speakers. It is a little late in the afternoon, and I hope that most of you can be kept awake and can pay a little bit of attention and are not too tired listening to speakers by now. So I'm going to talk to you about envisioning the post-COVID era. As we all know, the world is trapped in a bewildering crisis. COVID-19, the pandemic that has shaken the world, will perhaps change our lives forever. Often we now talk of a pre-COVID world when business went on as usual and a post-COVID world, which is the new normal, which is something that we have to get used to, and we have to gear up to change ourselves accordingly. With COVID numbers on the increase, the country is not only reeling under a stressed healthcare infrastructure, but also witnessing humanitarian challenges of unprecedented levels. But while this pandemic has caused enormous upheaval in every possible aspect of our lives, mental health, education, business, and livelihoods, on the brighter side, I think it also offers an opportunity to pause and rethink how to move forward towards a better future. It has made evident the extent of global interconnectedness in our economies, health, environment, and more broadly and essentially our humanity. The level of social disruption and economic devastation now calls for broad thinking, new strategies, and the need to seek out ways to holistic and inclusive human progress. So now we will have to make decisions to salvage and rebuild a shattered world with a vision that will atone for our sins against nature and man. Nothing less will suffice. Besides fighting the immediate threat, we have to decide how to collect the broken pieces and shape a new sustainable order. Mankind may not be able to get away with repeating its mistakes. Now let us see, where all did we go wrong? The pandemic has certainly uncovered many of our ugly secrets. Let us take the various fields point by point, beginning with the most relevant one, healthcare. Well, you might be wondering that I am a psychologist and I am speaking on a more general topic, but I very sincerely believe that the mind, the physical health, the environment, and the social milieu that we live in are all interconnected, and we cannot isolate the mind from the environment and from our existential experiences. Therefore, I'm going to talk about everything that goes to make a person what he or she is. So beginning with healthcare, the average doctor population in India is 1:11,000, as against the recommended ratio of 1:1,000. Alarmingly, in Bihar, it is 1:28,000. And in UP, 1 doctor to 20,000. And it is quite as bad in many other Indian states. The existing public health systems are inadequate inadequate, ill-equipped, and understaffed. Communicable diseases are responsible for 53% of deaths in India. On the other hand, the elitist section of society has access to the best private medical facilities. The elected representatives of the country have self-entitled themselves to travel abroad for treatment at the expense of the exchequer. And now the elite is suddenly faced with a virus from where there is no escape. Going abroad doesn't give them any better medical facilities. It has sneaked in to hit people in their mansions and their palaces. So, what is the lesson that we have to learn? You are as safe as your chauffeur, your gardener, your garbage collector, your cook, and your cleaner are. Forget about escaping to foreign shores, develop the ones at home, and make them available to the lowest rung of society. Build up a better infrastructure for public sanitation and hygiene, and plan for future disease outbreaks and pandemics. As of now, COVID-19 is here to stay. Even if a vaccine is developed, there are no guarantees that they will not be similar natural, biological, chemical, or other calamities in the time to come. So besides health, it has been a huge humanitarian crisis due to the inequality and marginalization of communities. A conservative number of internal migrants in India is 309 million, 20 lakh of which was stranded during the lockdown. There are 1.77 million homeless people in the country. They are mainly employed in unlisted, I'm talking about the migrant labor, and unorganized occupations like agriculture, construction work, factories, eateries, domestic workers, rickshaw pullers, taxi drivers, and cleaners. The glamorous cities that they help build afford them no living space. They spend their days at the worksite and huddle down for the night in slums, on pavements, or shanties. Most of them have come hundreds of miles away from their home villages in search of meagerly paid jobs. They work in abysmal conditions with no social security or backup. Survey reports had shown that 94% of the construction workers had no ID cards and 17% had no bank accounts, making them ineligible to receive any government aid. The lockdown resulted in hordes of insecure workers trudging hundreds of miles back to their villages. Besides the horrifying hardships they went through, this exodus must have certainly spread the virus exponentially, even though the government, of course, could never look beyond the Tablighi Jamaat fiasco. Do you think social distancing is any way possible in hordes of people who are traveling together? Or in people who are living cheek to jowl in shanties like slums of Dharavi? Understandably, metros like Bombay, Delhi, Indore, Kolkata, Chennai, Ahmedabad, they showed a high number of COVID cases because they are the cities which attract the maximum migrant labor. It's not that India is without resources. It is without equitable division of resources. You will be shocked to know that the richest 1% Indians own 58% of the nation's wealth, while the bottom 10% own 0.2%. Even more shocking is that in the British Raj in 1940, the richest 1% owned 20.7% of wealth. Shamefully, discrepancy in wealth distribution has more than doubled since independence. The privileged and powerful have looted their countrymen more than the British. The ever-growing inequality of opportunity deprives a major population of our country of healthcare, education, and basic human necessities. Since the poorest will be hardest hit by all of these COVID effects, lockdowns are expected to widen the existing inequalities across the globe, with the repercussions for years to come. The privileged classes must realize, if only for self-interest, that the smooth functioning of their factories, luxury villas, travels, vacations, and the exotic food on their tables is all made possible by the common invisible worker. They are essential links in a chain that moves the system. Fail them, and everything will collapse like a house of cards. Let's come to education. The world all over is looking to science to find solutions to combat the pandemic. The literacy rate in India is 74%, with 26.2 educated only up to the primary level. Literacy statistics do not, though, indicate the level of awareness, critical thinking, and scientific attitude. The present crisis has shown that even among the so-called literate people, people responded more readily to banging plates and lighting candles than to maintaining social distance and hygiene. The video clip of a woman banging a thali and shouting, Corona jao, was recently making the rounds on WhatsApp, and many of you must have seen it. Many people failed to report travel histories and follow hygiene protocol, showing a woeful lack of awareness between cause and effect relationships. We extol our Granths and Vedas, our glorious religious myths, at the cost of scientific theories and practices. Half of the serials on TV push people back to mythology, not towards inquiry and rational thought. It must be realized that science and pervasive education is the only mantra to survive the present and future health challenges. And why only health challenges? Literally survival challenges. Another very related topic is population control. Population control in India has been anathema to every government ever since the failure of Sanjay Gandhi's crude experiment to control population. So driven are the politicians by vote-inspiring policies that no one ever dared to initiate measures to contain India's swelling millions. The burgeoning population continues to add to the underfed, homeless, and the unemployed. When faced with the magnitude of this pandemic of this magnitude, all facilities and social welfare schemes will fall short unless we decide to control our numbers. Domestic violence. Even before COVID-19 existed, domestic violence was already one of the greatest human right violations. As the COVID-19 pandemic continues, this number is likely to grow with multiple effects on women's well-being, mental health, and their sexual and reproductive health. Long periods fostering tension and strain created by security, health, and money worries resulting in an increase in episodes of domestic violence, while separating women from people and resources that can best help them. Access to helplines, psychosocial support, and online counseling should be boosted. Police and justice services must mobilize to ensure that incidents against women are given high priority. Child abuse has likewise increased, leaving many children emotionally and psychologically scarred. Toxic home environments are traumatic for children too, negatively affecting their development and ability acquisitions. Another problem that COVID-19 has brought on is that many people have lost their dear ones. So they are called to cope with bereavement and mental health issues. COVID-19 is going to be a testing time for many relationships, throwing some people in constant unwelcome proximity and keeping some apart. It is likely to result in a number of breakups and estranged relationships. It has also left many people grappling with bereavement from loss of loved ones, and sadly, without the social support, which is so central to our culture. Continued social distancing is leading to alienation and increased cases of depression, many ending in suicide and self-harm. There is a rise in cases of anxiety and stress, also an increase in existing mental health problems. I am actively tele-counseling people, and I am dealing with cases on a daily basis for anxiety, for generalized depression, for suicidal thoughts, and for conflict, for domestic conflict. Now it also remains to be seen how isolation and physical distancing over long periods of time will influence the development of social emotional skills, like regulating your feelings, exercising self-control, and managing conflict with peers. Let's come to schooling and children. All of you who have school-going children must be facing a very challenging time, I'm sure. Schools are unlikely to open for the next few months, at least. Combined with the other stresses of living in isolation, it may have some serious consequences for children, delaying their cognitive, emotional, and social development. For those in the most critical period of adolescence, it may even increase the risk of mental illness. Disadvantaged children again will be hit the hardest, further widening the gap in educational achievement between richer and poorer families. While governments are trying to encourage homeschooling, it relies on good computer and reliable internet connection to be able to access the school's resources and a quiet room to study, which a large number of students in our country do not have. Homeschooling also assumes that parents themselves are sufficiently educated to help children with the lessons. Some students may actually regress because they will lack the opportunities for help at home. Also, nourishing activities like extracurricular activities, music, dance, sports, trips to the library, summer camps. And students who are studying abroad are very insecure about their futures, since many countries are no longer very hospitable to having them around. As we all know, there have been tremendous financial losses, unemployment, and closure of businesses. Lack of labor and transportation of perishable fruit and poultry has hit farming too. People have been laid off from their jobs, and this has created a desperate situation for many who have little savings to sustain themselves and their families through this time. The government needs to look into helping these people urgently and seriously. Cultural fallout. Social and cultural life has taken a big turnaround for the worse. Children playing in the park, seniors sitting around and chatting, youngsters dancing in clubs, evening parties, wedding celebrations, Diwali and Holi festivals, funeral processions are all things of the past. Watching a movie in the cinema hall, enjoying a music or dance recital in a betak, watching a match in the stadium are sorely missed. Group vacations, workplace meetings, religious meets, yatras, and parades have all become a dream. We are turning more and more towards technology and mechanization, reducing human interaction. This is a serious concern, likely to bring about a loss of empathy, bonding, and overall feelings of well being, again creating a breeding ground for mental health issues. The COVID-19 pandemic has done us at least one creditable service. It has shown us the ugly underbelly of a cruel and unjust system. It has proven that we are all aboard the same boat and must sail or sink together. No system can work well with such humongous discrepancies and imbalances. If the migrant labor had access to adequate housing and lived a normal life with their families, the unfortunate exodus, where at least hundreds of them lost their lives and exposing many to infection, would not have happened. If we had better personal health systems and services, our immunities would have fought the virus better with lesser casualties. There would have been more testing and better care for the ill, minimizing loss of life. This is thinking backwards. If national literacy rates were higher and people trained to a scientific temper, instead of feeding them on myths and fables, they would understand and accept medical logic better. The fallout of this catastrophe is likely to include an exponential rise in unemployment, loss of life, distress, deprivation, dip in production and GDP. History has shown that deprivation and hunger predictably result in a rise in crime rate and violence at individual and group levels. This could, at the worst, lead to food riots and social unrest. Vision, sacrifice, and determination is needed to take decisions to correct our flawed policies and institutions in order to avoid societal and economic chaos. Tough decisions must be taken to right the wrongs that have been accepted unquestionably for long. The world stands at crossroads today and will never be as we knew it before. Those in seats of power will have to work towards reshaping the economy, politics, and society to be equitable and inclusive. The choice made now will determine whether humanity progresses towards a better world or slides towards eventual chaos. The choice is ours to make now.